We have a dead Iranian on our hands. What should you make of it? Virginia, I've told you it's a preview of what's to come when it comes to the Second Amendment, and it's happening as we speak. And finally, some shocking Donald Trump news. There's a little dad joke in there for you. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Qassem Soleimani is absolutely dead. Deader than a doornail. He looks like a can of SpaghettiOs laying out on the ground, and that is an absolutely wonderful thing. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Where are we going from here? Well, I'm about to tell you all of it. But before I get to any of that, I want you all to understand something and understand it really, really well. A lot of you will remember. I understand it's a crazy news cycle, and there's a new scandal every day, or make-believe scandal every day. The world's going to end. Trump's getting impeached, yada, yada, yada. Well, you'll remember not too long ago, Iraq was an absolute disaster. What happened? We invaded. I was there for the invasion. We invaded. We tore up Saddam's troops like a hot knife through butter, went up to Baghdad, secured the country, and everything was fine. And then, like that, it wasn't fine anymore. And troops were getting blown up, having their throats cut. It was IED central over there. We have so many people either no longer with us or with us and missing vital parts of their anatomy now because of the war in Iraq. That happened because of Qassem Soleimani. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world, and they realized very early on, we have all these American troops in Iraq. We want to be the ones, we as in them and being Iran, we want to control Iraq. We don't want the Americans to control it. We have an opportunity here to kill a lot of Americans and make the American people hate this place and want to leave. And that's what they did, a lot. And I mean a lot. Those bombs, see, you like to think of a terrorist as sitting around in their ugly little mud hut, sipping on whatever kind of sludge they drink, talking about the next women and children they're going to kill with a line of bombs on the wall. I think we'll choose this one today. That's not exactly how it works. All armies, whether they be terrorist ones or official ones, they need supplies. They need training. You don't just fall out of the womb one day as a jihadi and know how to put together bombs, know where to put bombs, know exactly what to do. Guess who trained so many people across the world, not just Iran, not just Iraq, across the world? Guess who's been responsible for the funding, the supply, and the training of so many terrorists? Qassem Soleimani, ladies and gentlemen. He killed and maimed more Americans than you can possibly count. Before I get on to the rest of this with Pompeo's statements and how this happened and why it happened and what this means, I want to read you just a couple quick things I got from a friend last night, a friend who will go unnamed, a friend who is missing limbs. He sent me this last night as we were texting back and forth about the death of Qassem Soleimani. Bro, I saw what you said about Soleimani. Iran is the reason I look like this, and he sent me a picture of his missing limb. I'm so happy right now. Best Christmas present ever. And he followed it up with this. Let this hit home. A lot of guys I was in Walter Reed with are going to be celebrating tonight. If you fear war with Iran, that's fine. That's good. You should. If you're unsure about, was it the right move or not, that's fine. We can discuss all that in a minute. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, a bad, evil, disgusting human being was removed off the face of the planet last night. A man who hurt many, many, many Americans. There are many children out there who never will know their father because of Qassem Soleimani, and I'm glad he's dead. I wish it was more painful. Goodbye, good riddance to you. Now, why did it happen? A lot of people know about Iran's sponsor of militia groups, of terrorist groups, not only in Iraq, but around the world. That's what they do. Again, #1 state sponsor of terror. Well, what they've been doing is firing rockets at our people. And this is, you like to think of Iran, you like to think of all the Middle East of, they just have slings and stones. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Now, are they the United States of America? No, but Iran has a fairly modern army, and that's part of what makes it so dangerous that they are a state sponsor of terror. When they're providing militia groups with weapons to attack the United States of America, they're not just providing them with, a Molotov cocktail, they're providing them with rocket trucks, which is why they recently killed one of our guys. Then they got so bold is to actually attack one of our embassies in Baghdad, the biggest embassy in the world, I believe. And not only did they attack it, and this is the important part, pay attention, they attacked it and they had representatives there in person. There were Iranian representatives there, not in disguise, in broad daylight, allowing themselves to be photographed. Ladies and gentlemen, it's one thing to attack the United States of America, to attack our embassy, to try to bang down some walls and things like that. And it is another thing entirely to do so brazenly out in the open. That is Iran becoming bold on a level that they should not be bold. That is Iran on national television turning to the President of the United States and the whole United States military and raising two middle fingers and saying, come get some. You, as the President of the United States, you as a country cannot allow that to happen. Otherwise, you're not a superpower, you're a super pushover. So Donald Trump did exactly the right thing. Mike Pompeo talked about it a little bit.
President Trump made the decision, a serious decision, which was necessary. There was an imminent attack. The orchestrator, the primary motivator for the attack was Qassem Soleimani. Attempt to disrupt that plot. You all have been talking this morning about the history of who Qassem Soleimani is. He's got hundreds of American lives, blood on his hands. But what was sitting before us was his travels throughout the region and his efforts to make a significant strike against Americans. There would have been many Muslims killed as well, Iraqis, people in other countries as well. It was a strike that was aimed at both disrupting that plot, deterring further aggression. We hope setting the conditions for de-escalation as well.
What does he mean by that plot? Well, we don't have the exact specifics. I should say you don't have the exact specifics. I'm so popular and important, someone will probably let me know at some point in time. I'll probably pass along what I can down to you. But what we do know is this. Qassem Soleimani was planning on kidnapping and, let's be honest, torturing and murdering American citizens, American diplomats in Iraq. Over the past 48 hours, we've seen urgent messages from the United States State Department telling American citizens, do not visit Iraq. If you're in Iraq, get out of Iraq. And that is why, because Qassem Soleimani was planning on getting back at us or getting some Americans in his hands. Well, if you do that, look, President Barack Obama ain't there anymore, ladies and gentlemen. We have President Trump now, and whatever you think about him, he has been very, very forceful, very bold, very decisive on the world stage in that you do not get to harm American citizens free of any consequences whatsoever. Those days are over. The message has gone out worldwide. It's an important message for any president of any party to send. Hands off American citizens. Good for us. Pompeo had more to say.
The risk of doing nothing was enormous. Enormous in the short term in terms of the imminent attack that Qassem Soleimani was plotting, but also highly risky. Doing nothing in this region shows weakness. It emboldens Iran. It's what's happened under the previous administration for 8 years, where the Iranians felt free to conduct hundreds of attacks. We know that this didn't work. President Trump has taken a fundamentally different approach, and we're confident that our strategy that we've developed, not only the economic pressure, but building out coalition forces in the Straits of Hormuz, working to reinforce our Saudi and Emirati partners, all the things that we have done to create the conditions for a more stable and peaceful and prosperous Middle East, we think this is a part of.
You know what? Pointing out Barack Obama's weakness is not something we should ignore, ladies and gentlemen. You see, the Obama administration, again, chose to basically make all of our enemies their friends. They decided, they looked at the world stage and decided, well, anyone who hates us probably hates us because it's our fault. It's probably because we screwed up, and they completely shifted our Middle East policy to being pro-Iran, which, and honestly, if you have any knowledge of anything Iran has done, anything they continue to do, it's completely insane. Another thing, he mentioned about having to show force, about you can't show weakness in that area. One, he's right. I've been there lots of times in lots of places of the world, especially the rougher parts. People only understand force. You don't like to say that. That doesn't sound nice in your college sociology class, but that's the reality of life. Sometimes people only respond to the end of a gun. That's one. Two, talk about showing weakness. I hate to bring up something old, but do you remember Benghazi? Do you remember a bunch of terrorist scumbags organizing and killing our ambassador and dragging him through the streets on top of killing other Americans with almost no response at all. That is how you embolden an enemy, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you ensure the next embassy gets attacked and the next embassy gets attacked. How long do you think it's going to be until an American embassy gets attacked again under President Trump? Look, it could happen, it might, but the word, I guarantee, has gone out. If we're going to do this, we might want to at least hide our faces next time. Now, a lot of you ask yourselves, where does Donald Trump get so much great information? What smart people does Donald Trump lean on in order to provide him with the knowledge and the wit to do his job? He has the most important job in the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you're about to see here, he reaches out to the second most powerful man in the world. That's right, people. Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, woke up this morning, got on old Twitter.com, said, man, that Jesse Kelly, he's sharp as a tack. Retweet, not to brag or anything like that. Finally, we want to be respectful on this show, ladies and gentlemen. Qassem Soleimani is dead. And look, we want to be respectful of the dead. So I think it's important that we take this moment and show you his last photograph. That's beautiful. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Coming up next, former CIA officer and producer of the film Mosul, Dan Gabriel, joins me. Hang on. Well, we like to bring on experts from time to time on the show. Let's be honest, we bring on experts every single day. And if you're talking about Iraq, Iran's influence there, what's going on in the world of terror, there's nobody better than former CIA officer and director of the film Mosul, Dan Gabriel. Dan, Qassem Soleimani, a lot of people don't know his name. Look, that's probably a failure of the American media and a little bit the American people. They just don't take a great deal of interest in foreign affairs. But could you please do me the honor, do the audience the honor of explaining what was this guy's role with the Iranian government? Most Americans don't know. They think, oh, he probably wore a rag on his head and ran around with TNT. What did he actually do?
Well, he probably did both of those things. And of course, we're going to have to speak about it as the revered leader in the past tense based on what's happened yesterday. So, look, this is a guy that's been indirectly or directly responsible for killing at least 600 servicemen and women in Iraq during the time that you were there and up through recent years. So in addition to that, he's been involved for the last 20 years pushing Iran's proxy efforts across the Middle East and in the region, including Lebanon and Yemen, Syria, and of course Iraq, where he's caused a lot of carnage. And what he's tried to do is on behalf of the Iranian government, expand their influence across the region. And that's what really last week was all about.
What is their end goal? Does Iran really want, do they want these places to become basic colonies? They just want everyone to be a terrorist nation? Is it a religious angle? What's Iran's goal with all this proxy war stuff they do?
Sure. Well, in the near term, what they want is the U.S. out of Iraq. Now, what's interesting about what's happened this week is that may actually be the outcome of what happens. Of course, any U.S. troops that are in Iraq going forward, whether they're even diplomatic personnel or Western economic interests, are essentially going to be hostage to the Ayatollah at this point. So President Trump is in a real tough place because what Iran wants is they want to continue building that Shia crescent, which goes from Lebanon all the way down through Syria, through Iraq, and through the Gulf states into Yemen. And it's partially complete. It's near totally complete, I should say. So I think what you saw this week, these guys, the Iranians, have been acting up in the region since 1979 without any military strike against the country of Iran or its senior leadership. Believe it or not, this is the first time that we've actually taken action. Of course, the Israelis have retaliated, but the U.S. hasn't. So when people talk about this being bigger than the killing of bin Laden or bigger than certainly the killing of Baghdadi, they're right. This is a big deal.
Dan, what in the world is the Shia Crescent? Is that a new cereal? What is that? What does that mean?
It would be, and if it were the cereal, it would be the one with the marshmallows, the Lucky Charms shaped like the little moon there, except it would be green for Iran. But what it is, it's essentially Iran's attempt to build their influence in the region and to really control what happens in that part of the world. Of course, this all goes back to the split between Sunni and Shia. 100 years after the founding of Islam, they had to split within the religion. And of course, the Iranians, the Persians, that is, basically interpreted one way of the religion, and the Sunnis went the other direction. So really, that's what I think we're going to see over the next couple of decades, probably through the whole century, is going to be the defining factor, the fault line, if you will, in the Middle East, is going to be this battle between Sunni and Shia. That's what we cover in the movie. That's what Mosul is about. It gets into that whole concept of the sectarian differences. ISIS, in that case, is really just a sideshow. ISIS is what happens when these two powers, the Sunni and the Shia, are in conflict, and when there ends up being a power vacuum, ISIS creeps up. But it's really, ISIS is a third party to the whole charade.
Highly recommend anybody watch Mosul, by the way. I've watched it 3 times. Fascinating conflict. And now, I don't want you to obviously go into the detail you go into in the film, but give us the 30,000-foot view. What people get confused. Shia and Sunni, I mean, they're all Muslims. It's easy to think that they're all the same. What is the divide? What does one believe versus the other? Clearly, they're pretty upset about the differences.
Sure. Well, the first thing that people are going to be surprised by is by seeing some of the guys that were just killed yesterday, Mohandas and Soleimani, are actually involved in the battle against ISIS. In fact, they probably, and it's safe to say, that they've killed more ISIS than other elements of the Iraqi security forces. These guys were engaged in very effective, lethal warfare against ISIS. And of course, they saw ISIS as a threat to what they were trying to do, and that's why they got involved. And ultimately, they were a big part of the liberation of Mosul. Of course, what we get to is the whole concept, the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But in this case, they're not, clearly. And they haven't been, and they won't be, was really the takeaway or the theme, if you will, of the film, is that even once the battle against ISIS is done, the military campaign is over, these sectarian differences flare up again. You asked the difference between the Sunni and the Shia. Well, there's thousands of pages of academic text that you can read about how the family, it's basically a tribalist split within the family, and an understanding of how the religion branched off in a different direction through the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. It's basically
Dan, I don't want to explain something to me. And honestly, I understand there are a bunch of things you can't talk about and shouldn't talk about, and I know you won't. That's just the way it is. But when I see a drone strike on Soleimani with other powerful guys in Iran in a vehicle as it's leaving the airport, I see actual real-world intelligence. And while it's really nice to always take shots at the CIA, Lord knows I've taken plenty of them myself, somebody whether it be CIA or someone else, somebody provided some excellent intelligence to make that happen, correct? I don't think Soleimani was driving around in a big Soleimani car on the side.
Right. Well, look, it's 50-50 whether that was a JSOC drone, a Joint Special Operations Command, or a CIA drone. I hope it was a CIA drone, so we can claim credit for it. But you just look at that car. Early on in the reporting, they were saying, "Oh, there's a Katyusha rocket attack on the airport." You look at that car, it was just melted. So you can immediately tell that was a hellfire. So yeah, I mean, these guys operating with no reservation, just out in the open in Baghdad, cruising around. I mean, they were basically on the Tehran, Beirut, Baghdad circuit. I don't think Soleimani was there on a trade mission. So yeah, I mean, the intelligence, and the president has said they had intelligence that there was an imminent attack, and the justification for this targeted killing, assassination, if you will, was to stop that. I'll say one thing. I take real satisfaction in knowing that this was probably on or very close to Route Irish. So the idea of this guy getting killed on Route Irish, man, when you think about the number of GIs that get blown up by IEDs, man, that's that. I mean, there's just a real beauty in that.
There is a lot of beauty in that. And look, not to get too morbid about it, but I went to sleep smiling last night knowing that that's how that guy met his end, in a vehicle that blew up. That's exactly how that scumbag should die. Now, switching gears just a little bit. I was a little bit shocked when I saw, and I was shocked before we blew up Soleimani, I was shocked when I saw Iran's official people with Iran outside of our embassy in that protest in broad daylight, not even hiding it. What did you make of that? That seemed like such a bold, provocative step. It seemed like such a middle finger to America. We almost had to do something.
That's right. So look, the deputy commander of the PMF, the Iranian-backed militia, Abu Mohandas, was right there. There he is on the screen right there, taking selfies, just acting like this was his backyard, and he had the complete power to do what he wanted. And boy, was he wrong.
Oh boy, was he wrong. Dan, one last question before I let you go. I know it's weekend time. Afghanistan. If we're going to prosecute the war on terror, everybody uses that word now and it can mean a bunch of different things. Is Afghanistan still a hotbed at producing terrorists that are attacking the United States of America, or are they back to just kind of doing their own thing?
Well, I think they are doing their own thing. Of course, you've got ISIS fighting the Taliban at this point, and so there's really two levels of insurgency or terrorism or insurgency in the country that we've got to deal with. And now what we're going to have to take into account is Iran has a huge border with Afghanistan, and certainly the western part, Helmand and Kandahar. Iran's response to this, you may see part of that come in Afghanistan, and we're going to have to really think about how we protect our assets, our resources, our people, our personnel, whether they're serving in Afghanistan, Africa, or even Latin America, because Hezbollah, obviously another part of the picture here when we're talking about Iran, they've got influence across all these regions.
Well, God be with our men and women over there. Dan Gabriel, appreciate your time today, bud.
And congrats on the retweet from POTUS there this morning.
You know I don't like the brag,
I'm sure he's
man.
watching. Have a great weekend, man.
All right. You too, bud.
Take care, Jesse.
Coming up next, we've got a Second Amendment battle brewing, and now it's actually happening in Virginia. This is a preview of what's coming, ladies and gentlemen. Hang on. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the last thing in the world I ever want to do is brag on myself or draw attention to myself. But let me just tell you, during the break, I just taught the entire production staff one of the most gems, one of the best gems, not most gems, whatever, I don't speak very well, one of the best gems of wisdom I've ever dropped on anybody. Do you know if you're about to sneeze, like I'm here doing TV and I look super important? Do you know if you're about to sneeze, like I do on occasion? If you just look directly into a light, any one of the lights around you, it will stop your body from sneezing? You're welcome. Now, back to the task at hand. All right, we blew up a terrorist. We blew up, well, more than just a terrorist. He is the head of essentially Iran's CIA. So it is a very big deal, and we are about to see how this escalates in the coming days. President Donald Trump already gave a statement today saying, look, we did not do this to escalate a situation. We did this to de-escalate a situation. We didn't do this to create war. We did this to prevent a war. And this is a horrible human being, Soleimani. He's done so many bad things. This is totally justified. It's all good. But you can't just have a dead terrorist anymore. We all remember the ISIS scumbag Baghdadi when he got killed, the Washington Post running a headline calling him an austere religious scholar. So, of course, the American left couldn't just be happy. They had to freak out that some terrorist piece of filth was in the ground. Here's actress Rose McGowan saying, "Dear Iran, the USA has disrespected your flag, your country, your flag, your people. 52% of us humbly apologize. We want peace with your nation. We are being held hostage by a terrorist regime. We do not know how to escape. Please do not kill us." Hashtag Soleimani. So yes, that's a really sane person. Okay, moving on. Speaking of sanity, let's go to Ilhan Omar, the wonderfully cuddly representative from Minnesota. This is her response saying, so what if Trump wants war? Knows this leads to war and needs the distraction. The real question is, will those with congressional authority step in and stop him? I know I will. Let it be known that Ilhan Omar already voted to impeach the President of the United States. Beyond that, she has no power to do anything but apparently say a lot of bad stuff about Israel. Moving on. Nancy Pelosi. Now this is the one that gave me the best laugh. Nancy Pelosi thankfully put out a printed statement instead of an actual press conference. She said American leaders highest priority is to protect American lives and interests, but we cannot put the lives of American service members, diplomats, and others further at risk by engaging in provocative and disproportionate actions. Tonight's airstrike risks provoking further dangerous escalation of violence. America and the world cannot afford to have tensions escalate to the point of no return. You see, ladies and gentlemen, sadly, and I wish this wasn't the case, the Democrat Party's plan when it comes to dealing with terror, when it comes to dealing with horrible regimes like Iran, has always been telling them, you know, you're kind of right, America does suck. That was Barack Obama's entire foreign policy for 8 years. Apparently, it has entrenched itself with the Democrat Party. And look, not to get all melancholy on a Friday, but that doesn't speak highly of where we are as a nation, does it? It really doesn't. Knowing that some scumbag like that can be killed and one political party, basically the entire political party, has to come out and whine about it. That used to be something we could all celebrate, not even that long ago. You remember when Barack Obama was a president and SEAL Team 6 went in and shot bin Laden in the face? Republicans and Democrats all cheered, all celebrated. That's a great day. You didn't see this. Wow, Obama really shouldn't have escalated it. You just went out and celebrated because a piece of trash, enemy of the United States, got killed. That's the appropriate response if you love America. Do with that what you will. Now, back to Virginia. I wanted to talk about this briefly. Virginia has an issue. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the urban parts, the northern parts, the parts that are the D.C. sprawl, they are hardcore leftists. They're deep, deep blue now. And because it's the modern day Democrat Party and not your father's Democrat Party, they are aggressive. Democrats today are not just, live and let live Democrats. Oh, I just want to kill my kids, but I don't care what you do with yours. They want to enforce their will on you. They have a problem, though, in Virginia. I don't care how blue that northern part of Virginia is. There's this big old southern part down here. It is rural. They are gun-loving, and they are freedom-loving. Also, I just want to point out, I just said rural on live television and didn't even miss a beat. Not everybody can do that. Well, here's the problem in Virginia. They're trying to pass gun confiscation laws, and then the rural parts are standing up, and they're saying, not in my county, not in my city. Nobody knows what to do. We have this political cartoon here that pretty much sums things up pretty well. Half the problem Democrats run into when they discuss guns is they sound so freaking stupid all the time. From the USA Today publishing an article showing a chainsaw bayonet as being a possible attachment on an AR-15, to the guy during the Ferguson riots who took a picture. It's an actual reporter. This actually happened. I believe his name was Ryan Riley. He took a picture of earplugs on the pavement and said, I think these are blanks. Can anybody confirm? All right. Now, so here's the problem in Virginia. What are the Democrats going to do? They want the guns. They told their base they're going to get the guns. Rural Virginia has said you can't have the guns. In fact, sheriffs are coming out in these conservative rural counties and saying, no, you can't come in here. Well, the Democrats can't look weak and not try for them at all, but they're going to shoot their way in? So already we have Democrat congressmen. Keep that in mind. United States congressmen are already coming out and saying, well, the governor should just mobilize the National Guard. And somehow this is not a controversy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have United States congressmen talking about arming the National Guard and sending them into people's homes? Is that where we are now? If that's where we are now, this is about to look like some horrible future movie out there. Well, the Virginia National Guard had to put out a statement, which really isn't a statement at all. They said, from the Adjutant General of Virginia, we've received multiple questions regarding proposed legislation to the 2020 General Assembly session and the authority of the governor of Virginia to employ the Virginia National Guard in a law enforcement role. We understand and respect the passion people feel for the U.S. Constitution and Second Amendment. We will not speculate about the possible use of the Virginia National Guard. Well, allow me to speculate for you people, and you're not going to like to hear this, and it does me no pleasure to say it. A lot of times conservatives will comfort themselves and say things like, well, they're never going to enforce it. Oh, the National Guard will never enforce it. Open up a history book, ladies and gentlemen. Will some people refuse? Sure. But does the history of the world show you that the military and law enforcement will step up and stand up against their government, against these horrible laws? That's not what it shows me. Don't comfort yourself with that. Start voting for Republicans more and more. To talk about that and many other things, the first's very own Buck Sexton, who also got a retweet from the president today. Buck always has to copy me. That's coming up next. Hang on. Joining me now, against my better judgment, of course, the first's very own Buck Sexton. Buck, what was the first thought that went through your head when you saw it was Soleimani we dusted in Iraq?
One, it was relief and a no small degree of gratitude that President Trump was willing to do what his two predecessors in the Oval Office were unwilling to do, which was hold this scum accountable for killing a lot of U.S. soldiers, maiming a lot of U.S. soldiers, and really rubbing this in our face, by the way, Jesse. I mean, I think people need to focus in on this a little more. This guy who was directing the assassination of U.S. service members in Iraq, for example, feels so comfortable that he's able to go around taking battlefield selfies in countries that are war zones. And he's a combatant. He is a general in the Iranian Revolution, or was in the IRGC. There was no reason to confer this invincibility on him. And yet that was what the foreign policy establishment and the national security apparatus of this country decided for so long. It's really kind of unfathomable when you think about it.
Oh, it is. It's unbelievable. I'm glad you brought that up, because I marvel about the fact that when they attacked our embassy in Baghdad a couple days ago, you know, with those militia losers and threw a couple Molotov cocktails, Iran had representatives from their government in broad daylight, not even in disguise, taking selfies in the crowd, not even hiding the fact, here we are violating your national sovereignty and sticking it in your face. I honestly don't know how they thought they were going to get away with this with no consequences, but maybe you hit the nail on the head. Maybe that's just an indictment of our two previous presidents.
Yeah, I think that there was a lack of the will to do what was necessary here. With Obama, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, the bowing and the apologizing kind of speak for themselves. But even beyond that, Jesse, he wanted an Iran nuclear deal. He wanted a deal so badly that somebody like Soleimani was able to get away with murder, literally, because we didn't want to upset the Iranians too much. By the way, that also affected Obama's policy in Syria. We didn't want to do too much or get too involved because we didn't want to upset the Iranians. I mean, I remember because I was there in the CIA's Iraq office when a lot of these decisions were getting talked about, and there was a lot of discussion about what the future of Iraq was going to be. The Bush administration was just beaten down. I mean, you know, they were worried that people were going to talk all day about Cheney being a war criminal, and Bush was a shadow of his former self by his second term. So he didn't have the will to deal with this either, because these Shia militias, Jesse, I mean, you know, you serve, you remember, these guys were trying to take our guys out for over a decade now.
Oh, they were. I mean, people forget about the things they were doing, too. They'd set off IEDs, and then they'd have a secondary, bigger IED waiting for the rescue personnel to show up. I mean, really ugly, ugly stuff that we don't need to get into at the moment. Now, Buck, I want to bring it back on the home front for a moment instead of staying in Iraq. The Democrat response, it's not that I'm shocked. I mean, because this is just expected now. But we have Chris Murphy, we have Ilhan Omar, we have Nancy Pelosi, we have Chuck Schumer whining that he wasn't kept in the loop. Why? How are we at this point as a nation where we can't all, even for a brief moment, I don't expect them to put on Trump bumper stickers. Can't we just all for a moment as a nation say, yes, a bad guy got killed? Well, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what you and I were doing when Barack Obama, or the SEAL Team 6 under Barack Obama, killed bin Laden. I cheered. I had a bunch of whiskey that night.
Absolutely true. And it really does show the difference in the depth of the tribalism between left and right these days. I think it's still really culturally among conservatives, it's uncool and unacceptable to be unwilling to look at something that's obviously good for the country and just say, well, if a Democrat did that, I don't like it. With Democrats, though, Trump derangement syndrome has gone so far that it doesn't matter. I mean, there are all these jokes you're seeing now on social media. And I think, I'm not even sure that they're jokes in the sense that if Trump cured cancer, there would be blue checks. Like if a Trump program came up with some new cancer cures, there would be blue checks who were saying that this was, you know, Trump requisitioning funds that he's not allowed to. There'd be a court challenge to it. He's an authoritarian. You can't think of anything that Trump could do that's good for the country, that there would not be at least some blue check journos freaking out about. But you're talking about like Schumer and Pelosi and these people. I mean, they won't give him any credit for this. They're all talking about escalation. It's been a one-way escalation from the Iranian perspective for how many decades now, where they just keep doing what they want to do in the region and against us. I'm going to do anything in response. But yeah, I cheered when Barack Obama called for the raid on bin Laden, and he duly got credit for that. It was the right move. We're not seeing that from Democrats, and I think we all know why.
Buck, I don't want to be too myopic, you know what I mean? Because look, we're neither of us are 15 years old, but we're not 80 either. We lived through the Bush presidency. We lived through the Barack Obama presidency. Granted, we weren't super important and famous like we are now, but we lived through them. Has it always been like this for Democrats? Is that just the way did they treat Bush the same way? I realize they didn't treat Bush well, but was there nothing he could ever do?
No, I mean, I can just speak from personal experience being up here in New York City. Unlike you, I have not yet figured out that living in a state with no state tax, income tax, and also surrounded by at least a decent-sized contingent of people who still love this country is something. I haven't figured that out yet, Jesse. I still live in the belly of the beast here in New York City. But I would say that you see the hatred of Trump and of conservatism was way beyond anything you've seen before. And that's true at a very personal level, day to day. I mean, people now won't even talk to you if they find out you're a Trump supporter. People would make fun of you maybe before if you supported Bush. But if you're, I think if you look at it from the ground up, it's not surprising at all that we now also have, a Democratic Party that is trying to actively destroy this president, would send his family members to jail if they could. And oh, by the way, the not notifying Schumer and Pelosi, et cetera, before this, that's a courtesy, and it's one that these Democrats absolutely do not deserve. They have been calling this president a traitor and allowing this nonsense to continue on for 3 years. Why should he show them any courtesy whatsoever? I mean, he has to obey the law and conduct his constitutional duties, but he doesn't have to be nice to them. I think we're beyond that.
Buck, we have a situation in Virginia. I have been saying I think it's a preview of what's coming in the United States. We have the urban northern part of Virginia that really wants all the guns, and now the leftists are extremely aggressive. We have the southern rural parts who are saying you can't have our guns. There's talk about National Guard. We have sheriffs standing up saying, I won't enforce the law. How do you see this playing out in Virginia? I can't see American citizens giving up their guns. I also can't see the leftists saying, well, sorry, we tried, and giving that up either. And I have to be honest, I'm a little worried about how that ends.
Yeah, I think that this is what we've known is has been coming for a long time, which is when you start having law enforcement, conducting operations against law-abiding citizens who, under any common sense understanding, including a Supreme Court understanding under D.C. v. Heller, have lawfully owned firearms, you're going to send law enforcement after them. This is going to lead to the sort of standoff that you see at the end of the movie The Siege, which, by the way, I think is kind of an underrated movie. I don't know if you remember that one with Denzel Washington back in the
100%.
day. With Bruce Willis, where you had, U.S. military told by their lawful commander, draw down on these FBI guys, and FBI guys saying, well, draw down on these guys. We don't ever want to have that in this country. But when you have citizens who are having law enforcement come to their homes to take guns in this way, it does start to have that itch of tyranny. And when that begins to happen, law enforcement is put in a really bad spot. And all it takes is miscalculation on one side or the other. This has happened in the past, by the way. We've seen, especially federal law enforcement. People forget, Waco is really about unlicensed firearms. That's actually, it was an ATF operation, if memory serves. So this can get very ugly very quickly. And, Virginia is a battleground already politically. We don't want to see it start to get to be a place that is a harbinger of things to come in the rest of the country, where you have law enforcement in a dangerous situation and citizens in a dangerous situation because Democrats are a bunch of gun-grabbing maniacs, which they clearly are.
Buck Sexton, the best hair in the game, ladies and gentlemen. Catch him right here on The First. We will be right back to show you an electrified lawn sign. Hang on. Well, just when you thought the presidency of Donald Trump couldn't get any more shocking, we have this little gem of a video that came out. I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but essentially the story behind it is some guy kept getting his yard signs stolen and vandalized, his Trump yard signs, as you see. So he chose to link up his yard sign with electricity and gave a nice little jolt to the idiot vandal who was running through his yard. And of course, people were out there, who's this psychopath electrifying his sign? Ladies and gentlemen, here's an uncomfortable fact nobody wants to talk about. You don't like it. Sometimes I don't like it, but it's the truth. You learn things through pain. We don't want to talk about that. I mean, nobody likes to discuss the fact they had to take their kid in the bathroom and swat him on the rear end. Nobody likes to talk about the fact that they started hitting the gym when their buddy called him fat. That's uncomfortable. It's not nice. But the truth of the matter is, if you're some deranged dirtball leftist and you somehow think it's your right to charge onto other people's property and rip up their Trump yard signs as if that's going to accomplish something, you need to learn a lesson. You can't step out on the porch and talk to that person. The best lesson you could possibly do for that person is to shock him so he poops his pants and has to run home to his mother to change in his basement. That's what this great patriot did. I highly encourage everybody else to do the same. Enjoy your weekend, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you Monday.